have the Ayatollah of fantasy rock and roller with us today, Adam Rank. How you doing, Rank?
They look great in person, and I just can't wait till next year where we can pack it full of 25,000.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I didn't know it was Ball Guys Day. It was me and Rank. I mean, how can you lose?
This is the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast.
And welcome to the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast. This is episode number 112, give or take. We get closer each and every time, so we're just kind of winging it here each and every week. As always, I am joined by Major Caldwell, a little at way too major, double F, and of course Tara Roberts at It's Tara time. Today, we are joined by an individual who looks nothing like his Twitter profile. More on that a little bit later. But you may know him from, such shows here as the managing editor, the Raiders Wire. I think that's a USA Today type thing going on there. The Game Day Live, NFL, Locked on the Cowboys, Locked on Dynasty, and we are locked on Edinburgh University's very own Marcus Mosher. How you doing, Marcus?
Thank you for that introduction, Matt. I really appreciate it. I'm doing well. We've got Senior Bowl this week. We've got some big NFL stuff happening. It's a good time to be a football fan.
It is. It's exciting. I know I talked to Mr. Nagy here last year about the Senior Bowl. Really wanted to get down this year. But the one good thing about the Senior Bowl is the virtual credentials. I know I'm watching the film here at my computer. You're doing the same thing. And you know what? I hate to say it. I'm just going to say it, Major. It's thigh season right now. Trey McBride busting out the thigh. And I'm all about that. Give me the thighs over the hands 7 days a week and twice on Sundays.
Man.
Now, with that all being said, we are going to get into Behind the Grind here in just a few minutes. But we want to get into our contractually obligated football talk. And as always, the ViperCast is brought to you by the Fantasy Points Media Group. Hey, you want to get that advantage on your competition here heading into 2022? Head over to fantasypoints.com and get 30% off that subscription right now, right up until the Super Bowl. And speaking of the Super Bowls, one of the individuals who's won 12.7% of the Super Bowls in the history of the National Football League, he has retired, I think. Schefter broke the news like 2 or 3 times, so I'm still not 100% certain if this has happened. Marcus, what are your original thoughts on this?
I'm bummed, Matt, because Brady has been basically part of my football memory bank forever, right? For the last 22 seasons, Brady has been one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And it's a little sad to see him hanging up, especially with how well he played this year. Like, he's not retiring because the game has passed him by. He's retiring because he needs to go be a dad and he needs to go be a husband, and it's time for him to move on. But it bums me out a little bit that he's retiring.
Yeah, you know what? He's been a big part of my life too as a Raiders fan. And by the way, it was a fumble. I don't care what anyone says.
Yes, it was. Thank you.
It still haunts my dreams to this day. And you know what? Greatness, you have to recognize it when it's right there in front of you. And I know I make fun of Brady as much as probably anybody, but the truth of the matter is, you look at what the numbers are. Dude's like 62 years old this last season. Don't fact check that, by the way. And he still threw for more yards than he's ever thrown ever before. I mean, that's insane.
I would also say the NFL is better when we have like these legendary quarterbacks, right? Yeah. When we had Peyton Manning and Tom Brady going against each other, like on a Sunday Night Football, it felt really meaningful. And without Brady, I mean, the NFL is going to be fine, but it loses a little bit. So I am going to miss him. I mean, I cover the Raiders. I'm a Cowboy fan. He's dominated my teams forever, and I'm still going to miss him.
Well, yeah, it's kind of weird because he was one of those guys where if it's rare to think that a quarterback could actually play until they were 50. But if there was someone in the way he takes care of himself, if there was someone that you thought could really do it, it would be him. So I was kind of shocked.
Yeah,
well, I mean, look at those.
I think he could have been. I think he could have been a top 3 or 5 quarterback for at least 3 more years. Like we didn't see anything from him this year that would indicate that he was hitting a cliff or anything like that.
Well, how old was Daryl LaMonica? He looked like he was about 88 years old. He might have only been 32 at the time, but he looked like he was 88. Tom Brady had like the Benjamin Button thing going on, where I think he actually started looking younger and younger as his career progressed, which is absolutely saddening for me, actually, when I think about that.
Listen, if you're rich enough, you don't have to worry about getting old. That's what I found out through Tom Brady's career, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very worried about myself then. But I think the NFL's in good hands. You know, we're talking about Ben Roethlisberger retiring. We watched Manning go. We watched Rivers go. Now Tom Brady's going. But we have a good crop of young quarterbacks ready to take that mantle over moving forward. And you know what? Maybe it's about time someone else other than Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl. So, Major, what do you got for us on the news and notes this week?
Yeah, we got Brian Flores versus the Giants versus Denver versus Miami. Marcus, what are your thoughts on Brian Flores and his lawsuit against the NFL?
First and foremost, good for Brian Flores. Like we needed somebody to kind of go scorched earth on the NFL because what's happening across the NFL with some of the coaching hirings is ridiculous. I don't think Brian Flores should have been fired to begin with. Exactly. And now he's getting interviews in which the teams aren't really taking him seriously. You know, we saw that with the Giants. He talked about that in the lawsuit against the Broncos. It's a travesty. And I don't know what the NFL solution is, but we have to get more black coaches at the league. We deserve more black coaches in the league. And I'm hoping that this entire Brian Flores situation brings about some change.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah, I hope he doesn't get blackballed. You know, that's my biggest fear for him in his career because he's still a pretty young coach. So
he's too good of a coach to have that happen, right? Yeah. Like if he wanted to go be a defensive coordinator, 28 teams across the league should go hire him right now to be a defensive coordinator. But I think he's too good to even do that. I hope the Texans or some team like that goes out and hires him because he should be one of our 32 coaches in the league.
Yeah.
So do you think the owner, Ross, there was paying him $100,000 to like throw games, or was he maybe like going, you know what, I know his situation's bad. Here's a little bit of comfort money in the case we lose. Maybe was Ross maybe being a good guy? No, probably not.
No,
like you already know the answer to that.
No, Stephen Ross, a good guy, is not something that we're ever going to say again. I think there's ways to tank in the NFL, right? We've seen this happen before. And listen, I understand it from a organizational standpoint. That 2020 class had Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert in it. Like, it's a pretty good quarterback class. And if you wanted to have the number 1 pick, you probably, would have got rewarded with a great quarterback prospect. However, paying a coach to intentionally lose games is not a good look, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that you want to ever have happen because of a couple of different things. One, with sports gambling becoming a big thing, throwing games and point shaving is basically what this is. That's just an awful look. And then on top of that, asking a coach like Brian Flores to intentionally lose games to make his record look worse is not only going to hurt him now, but it's also going to hurt him down the road when he's trying to get another head coaching job, right? Because all of a sudden his record is going to look worse than what it is. So I think it's just an awful move by Stephen Ross.
Was that the tank for Tua? Was that
That was the tank for Tua draft, but
the
Tua hurt. Right. Tua had the huge hip injury that kind of changed everything up.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it's crazy because you look at these teams this year where you had teams that, you had Detroit, you had the Jets, you had Houston, Jacksonville, all, jockeying for that number 1 spot, but none of them seemed like they were actually jockeying for that number 1 spot. Yeah. You see Dan Campbell actively like pushing his team to get wins. You see Houston over there, Davis Mills trying to make something of himself. So the players care. So to actively try and get organizationally, try and bring down the team for a draft pick when you've got these players whose careers are tied to it, it's just kind of crazy.
It's a bad message, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Speaking of bad messages, as a Raiders fan, Tara, what do you got on the news docket?
Well, as of right now, Josh McDaniels is still over there with the Raiders. We gotta kind of keep our eye on it just to make sure.
Now, right?
Yeah, for now, we just gotta keep our eye on it. You never know with him. But yeah, Raiders. new head coach. We've got new head coaches everywhere. But yeah, guys, I mean, Marcus, what do you think about Josh McDaniels, the hire there? A little controversial.
First and foremost, it bums me out a little bit that Rich Bisaccia didn't get a chance to be the head coach there because I thought he did such a good job at the end of the year.
Job.
But I understand what the Raiders are thinking. They're thinking long term, which coach gives us the best chance to win a Super Bowl. And it probably is Josh McDaniels. Maybe McDaniels could do the right thing and hire Rich Bisaccia to be their special teams coach. I don't know how likely that is, but we'll see. But I think McDaniels obviously did not do well in Denver the first time he was a head coach. And he talked about it at the press conference. He said, I knew a little bit about football. I didn't know anything about people. And over the last decade, I've learned how to interact with people. I learned how to coach them and how different personalities mesh. So I'm optimistic that Josh McDaniels is going to be a good coach with the Raiders. I think the personnel actually suits him pretty well. You know, they got two really good tight ends in Darren Waller and Foster Moreau. He's got Hunter Renfrow, who might catch 175 passes there. And then I think Derek Carr fits the system pretty well. So I do think Josh McDaniels could be a good coach in a really tough division.
One of my biggest worries there is I know McDaniels is not exactly the best evaluator of quarterback talent. He did bring a quarterback in. They won a playoff game. Let's give Tim Tebow a little bit of love there, but that was one of the McDaniels guys there at one point. Now, we do have that New England connection there with the general manager that the Raiders have signed in there, who actually had a pretty good draft for the Patriots last year. The Patriots not really known as a solid drafting team, but he took over the reins last year. He's bringing that here to the Vegas Raiders. I'm not sure if that's an upgrade on Mike Mayock. I really don't believe that Mayock got a fair share when it came to the actual draft, especially in the first two rounds. What are your thoughts there as far as the draft goes for the Raiders?
Yeah, I don't know if it's an upgrade over Mike Mayock or not, but I do know that it's an upgrade over John Gruden because I don't think you could draft worse than John Gruden did from the moment that he got there. So I think McDaniels is going to stay out of the way a little bit when it comes to making personnel decisions. I think he'll have some input. I'm sure they're going to ask him what type of players and guys he's looking for. But I think Dave Ziegler is going to have basically full control over the roster. And that's a good thing if you're a Raiders fan, because we've seen too often over the last couple of years, the head coach making decisions for right now to win games when that's maybe not the best move long-term. I am optimistic that this is, I don't want to say a great structure between the GM and head coach, but better than what they've had over the last decade.
Yeah, let's stop talking about the losers and let's get into some of these championship review from last week. What are some of the things that pop out to you from last week games? I
mean, the defense for the Bengals was incredible. I know everybody's throwing the flowers to Joe Burrow. He deserves them, right? Like the confidence that he gives that team and the way that they played is incredible. But the defense. Patrick Mahomes had 16 passing yards in the second half in overtime against the Bengals. Yeah. 16! And that's after playing almost a flawless first half against that team. I think this Bengals team is really good. And I think there's a chance that they're even better next year. Like once they upgrade that offensive line, once Jamar Chase goes into a second year, which is typically the year that receivers break out, I don't see why the Bengals can't be perennial AFC contenders.
Wow. But I don't want to toot my horn just a little bit because last week we were talking and I think I was the closest on all these games here. I got both of them right. They're both was really tight. I think Tara, you were all the way off. Matt, your scores are way off. So I'm just gonna pat myself on the back one more time because I'm always
just
right.
Throwing Matt and Tara under the bus there.
No, they always give me crap, Marcus. They always say that I'm wrong, but I'm always right. No,
he's got to take his opportunities where he can.
Take your victory lap. You're good. You earned it.
There you go.
Actually, funny story. My point spread was actually closer than your point spread. You had the Bengals winning by 1. I had the Bengals winning by 3.
Okay, I guess. What about the other game? What about the second game?
Yeah, I had the Rams winning by 10. You had them by 3. So let's pump that horn before you start tossing the little throwing rocks around in the glass house there, Mr. Major. But the biggest thing for me for the Bengals is that offensive line held true. I was worried about what Chris Jones was going to do to that interior. And hey, we've seen what the Titans did. That whatever they did, the Bengals corrected that, and it paid off for them last week. Now, as far as the Rams are concerned, oh boy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think Burrow just got rid of the ball quickly, did not try to hold it, and it paid off.
Yeah.
Well, he had some pretty good words coming from Tom Brady saying the best decision he ever made was leaving Ohio State. Maybe that taught him to throw the ball a little bit quicker. Maybe Brady gave him a little bit more advice heading into that game.
We'll see if it carries over. Sorry,
we can't give Brady everyone's wins. Like, he's one to know. We can't keep giving other wins to Tom Brady. Let's relax a little bit.
We'll see if it carries over to the Super Bowl, though, because that Rams defense, is a little different there. Yeah, who you got, Marcus? You got who you got?
My heart is rooting for this Bengals team because I just love watching them so much, but my head's telling me the Rams for the reason you just mentioned, right? That pass rush.
Yeah,
we saw what Jeffrey Simmons did to the Bengals in the divisional round of the playoffs, right? He just dominated. Well, Aaron Donald's better than Jeffrey Simmons, and the Rams have Von Miller and Leonard Floyd and Ashawn Robinson. Like, this is just a really bad matchup for the Bengals, and I think it's a great matchup for the Rams. I would not be shocked at all if this is a 14, 17-point win for the Rams, and they deserve it. This is, I think, the most talented roster in the NFL, top to bottom. They've got superstars galore. I think we're going to be trending into a game that's not very good here in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of interesting because we'll get to see if we get into a shootout situation, because ironically, both of these teams, I mean, they're identical in points per game. They're nearly identical in total yards per game. The big difference there, again, as we mentioned, is the defense. But are we thinking we're going to get to see a Matt Stafford, Joe Burrow, incredible quarterback shootout? Or are we going to see a little bit more of a defensive struggle?
We don't really see a ton of shootouts in Super Bowls. Typically what we see is the first quarter or so, the teams kind of feel each other out, a lot of running, a lot of safe conservative plays, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams try to open things up in the second half. I think this is going to be like a 27-17 type of game. You'll see moments where both quarterbacks look fantastic, but I don't think we're going to get a 38-35 type of contest in LA.
Yeah, and the things that give Matt Stafford that second half of the season, the problems the most was four-man pressure. I mean, he was absolutely stellar against the blitz. I think he had like a 139.6 passer rating against the blitz. Obviously, teams, when they got pressure on him, was down to 65%, but they're doing that with that four-man rush. I don't know if the Bengals can consistently get that four-man rush on him outside of Trey Hendrickson there. And the key for last week was getting Odell Beckham Jr. involved, who the previous two games against the 49ers, he had 20 yards, no more than 20 yards in either one of those contests. He went off for like 120 yards in that NFC Championship. If this Rams offense is going, I can't see Eli Apple buying enough Super Bowl tickets for Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and whoever else. I mean, those players may take him up on that offer, because I can't see him stopping Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham Jr., Van Jefferson. It's not a good matchup for the Bengals. Now, I'm not going to say the Bengals can't win it, but of course, like you said, you look at matchups make the games. We've watched this time and time again. We watched some pretty good teams like the Rams the last time they went to the Super Bowl. They looked good. The matchup against the Patriots at that time was not a good matchup for them. And now maybe the tables have flipped somewhat.
Doesn't it feel like if the Rams play like a B+ or A- game, they're just going to win because they're just so much more talented? I think the ceiling for this Rams team is just so much higher for the Bengals, but we've seen the Bengals, they can kind of muddy things up in the second and third quarter and just get this game late. And when you've got a quarterback that is as confident as Joe Burrow and a kicker that is as good as McPherson, you can steal games, and it wouldn't be shocking at all if the Bengals did that.
Yeah.
So do you think maybe Jalen Ramsey gets in the face of Evan McPherson and starts talking some trash to him?
Only if McPherson is kicking, pregame field goals with the cheerleaders on the field and the players warming up. I think that's the only time it happens, right?
So you've got the Rams winning this game right now. Things could change, obviously. Last year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they won at home. We're kind of giving this one right now to the Rams at home. Can you tell me where the Super Bowl is next year?
Is it in Las Vegas?
I believe it is. So I want to say the 2020 next year's Super Bowl champions, Super Bowl 57. Your Vegas Raiders are going to get one.
I think we need to go together, Matt, if that happens. I think we should go and watch that game. Watch our Raiders play whatever crappy NFC team. We're going to see it.
I'm in. And Major, we'll send you some souvenirs there and stuff because I know the Raiders are probably like your 5th favorite team. So
funny. You guys are funny.
With that all being said, hey, we're going to head over to part 2 of this. We're going to get behind the grind. We're going to get to know Marcus here in just a second. But before we do, a little shout out to our Fantasy Points Media Group family, the affiliates there, the True North Fantasy Football crew there of Ty and Travis, Tyler there with the Dynasty Happy Hour, P2W Fantasy, that's Major's boy there, Nick Script, they get their thing going on. Smokey Nelson there, the Smoke Show. We've got obviously the Dynasty Vipers, the Injury Prone podcast there with Edwin. Again, big shout out to him and his little adventure there with the Minnesota Twins down in Florida now. So congratulations again once to him. Triple Play Fantasy crew, the Campus to Canton guys. And hey, again, head over to fantasypoints.com and get that subscription today. 30% off. Where can you get a better deal than that right now? 30% off a subscription. Sign up today. And give us a few seconds. Got to grab a quick drink of water, and then we're going to come back behind the grind.